Right. Hey guys, welcome back to the Goatworn Armcast, week 2. How's everyone doing? We've got Guthrum of Norvik back, we've got Just Eastern Things back, and of course the Shire Reeve and your host, Goatworn Armband. All right, guys, so it's been a week. We've had some feedback already. How are we feeling? How are we doing?
I think the first episode went quite well. I'm pretty happy with how it came out, and I think a lot of other people were.
Indeed.
One thing I'd say is we noticed pretty early on, obviously with the uploading, that the levels were a bit low, and as Goatworn knows, we just couldn't do it once the video was uploaded.
Yeah, there was a few issues with that, but hopefully we've balanced the volume a bit better this time. One thing for me that I picked up the moment I started listening back is my habit of saying every time I pause for thought. So to prevent this turning into Goatworn Band, I'm going to try not to do that so much this week.
Yes, I think it's one of those things that'll get better with time. I just did it then.
That's it. It's dreadful. You relax into it, and I have to make a serious effort not to relax into it. So yeah, we were kind of just pondering our next step and topics to cover, our next Farb of the week, and compiling all our bits and pieces that we'd be going over this week. And then Ubisoft just dumped the Assassin's Creed Valhalla trailer in our laps. So fuck it, we're doing that. So yeah, expect that to take up the majority of this episode, because I know damn well we've got a lot to say on the matter.
Yeah.
So
we've written a lot of notes.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, we filled the channel with it. So what we're going to kind of do is, I think the best thing is to try and split it up into sections of the costume first, the setting, overall feels about the trailer and its content, because obviously costume is only one thing. There's other bits and pieces we can touch on. So we'll try and compartmentalize it as best we can.
Yeah,
but yeah. I feel that we're just going to get caught up in the flow of salt at the end of this.
Definitely.
Any kind of starting comments before we get in? Have you guys played Assassin's Creed?
Played some of the earlier games. I think the latest one I played was Black Flag.
I've played all of them up to about Assassin's Creed 3, I think. I mean, they're not bad games, but I know a lot of people think they've gone downhill in recent years. But other than that, I mean, they're not terrible games. And what actually struck me with this is, in the past, they've often had a reputation for being fairly accurate, as a historical fantasy game can be.
Yeah, I mean, that's been my experience with it. And what I will say going into this is, I think we all understand that these are games at the end of the day. They're entertainment, they're not documentaries. That's fine, we take that as read. The issue at least I take with it is how far they've gone the fantasy direction, which we'll go into obviously. And also the marketing side, where in an interview the developer said that with regards to comparisons that are inevitably going to be made with God of War, the last one that came out, boy, and all that. They said that by comparison, this will be more steeped in historical accuracy. Add into that they had Jackson Crawford, who's quite a well-respected historian and historical expert, and someone actually I enjoy listening to. They've got his involvement and they hyped that up, and then you release a trailer like this. That's why I've got a bit more of a vested interest in ripping this apart in particular. that, and is kind of my thing. So
it's got a lot to pick up on, and as we've said, we've got a lot in the channel as well to talk about. What do you want to talk about first, Goatworn?
So I think we should head straight into the kit, because that's the most striking and obvious thing to go for. And I know that between you and Guthrum, you guys have got kind of the best understanding of Anglo-Saxon and Viking Age kit of the four of us. So I'll let you guys kind of start. Well, pick your poison. There's so much to choose from. It's like a buffet of shit.
Ooh, that sounds grotty.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the big problems with it is it's got a lot of things in it that are classic, like, seasoned reenactors, even the old guard know they're not right. Like the fur on the outside, for example. It's just we have no evidence for it. And we haven't had any evidence for that kind of thing. We haven't had any belief that is the case for a long time. And it's disappointing to see it again.
That's Game of Thrones level kit. That is. It's like having an IKEA sheepskin rug slapped over your shoulder, saying, "I'm a Viking."
Exactly. The other points I'll make is the Saxons as well. I mean, they're actually not as bad as the Vikings. I'll be honest. They're still completely wrong, but they aren't as wrong. I mean, the helmets look like something that is trying to be a Coppergate style helmet, but isn't.
And it's like I mentioned in the preamble, podcast. Yeah, the preamble. It looks like someone's looked at the Coppergate helmet with their eyes squinted and said, "Oh yeah, I can recreate that. Let's do that." And that's what they've done.
Exactly. And I mean, at least he's wearing a mail shirt. By the way, also, any pictures that we're referencing, there will be quite a lot of pictures we're referencing, will be on the video of this podcast. So if you're listening, unfortunately, you won't be able to see that. But yeah, so he also appears to be wearing a very long gambazon, which again isn't period for the time this isn't period for the era this is supposed to be portraying. We have as far as the evidence is concerned, we have none for that kind of thing.
I'd say that reference thick, really thick wool tunics, which is similar to what I built. It's easier to get that than it is to make a gambazon.
Yeah, I can totally envision that as well. And if you see them, they really do look quite similar to the standard tunics, like you say. I mean, I know
it is kind of the lesser evil within this trailer, though, isn't it?
Yes, I think the Saxons don't have as many problems.
The shields, I've got more of an issue on the Saxons, which
Definitely. I was just getting to that one.
Not just kite shields, but entirely the wrong style of kite shields for even late Anglo-Saxons.
They also have very 13th, 14th century Germanic complex heraldry on them. I think I saw one that was like a full German eagle style, and it just doesn't fit.
No, heraldry was not a thing back then, as far as we could tell.
Yeah, as far as we know.
I mean, there's later reference to things like flags and the like, but again, that's later. That's
exactly
written hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years after the fact. We have very little.
I think the big problem with the Vikings and the difficulty with actually talking about their material culture in this game is most of it is just wrong. There isn't actually much correct.
That was the point I was going to make, actually, just to kind of segue us onto the Vikings, is that if we're looking at the Anglo-Saxons, they at least look inspired by history And whilst the kite shields are the wrong shape and a bit late for the period, and the helmets are, they're wrong, but they do at least look functional and somewhat reminiscent.
They cover the aesthetic of the real history, at least.
I would be happier if that was the theme throughout, of there was a bit of everything across the 500 years this period encompasses, bit mingled, bit mismatched, but otherwise kind of keeps the silhouettes. I know we touched on that last time, the silhouette of what's recognizable. But if we pull up the picture of the main cast, as it were, with our hero Ivor and his merry men and women posed dramatically, that I think this is the real. If we're being considered to be nitpicky on the Anglo-Saxon front, we can't be considered to be so here when there is so much. I can't pick a single thing here that's correct.
Maybe the fact there's a boat.
The village looks semi-authentic.
Which one? In the one where they're
No, not the fire. No, not the fire. Like if you go to the video, let's pick the exact second at 1 minute. So you go to 029 and it's just the docks and some sea. That looks authentic. That looks like real water.
Oh, some of that, yeah. I mean, yeah.
It looks like a Norwegian kind of Shire.
So Justin Easton, we've got a picture in the in podcast content with our dude, our protagonist.
Well,
posed on a rock.
He does have a modern Norwegian female name, of course.
Okay, so how far down am I looking? 1 minute. How far down am I looking? Let's have a look.
3 pictures up.
Okay. Oh God.
Exactly. I mean, the sky looks about right.
Man, I'll be honest. Exists. I didn't realize they took me as a LARPer. I'm like that guy on the left of him. Literally looks like a cross between me.
My favourite is the one on his left, Thickamus Maximus.
Oh yeah,
he's just
the
centurion.
Looks like the grizzly hedgehog.
Yeah, he looks like they stole the mountain from Game of Thrones and made him just roid rage to hell.
I want him as DLC.
One thing I want
him as a playable character.
You probably can. The multiplayer, I suspect, you probably be able to. I wanted to ask you guys, this has been bugging me a little bit, so I'm sort of curious, to you guys for this. So, because I have no kind of understanding of it. The scale armor that the Saxon guy wears, the Centurion, as I'm calling him from now on, that looks like they took Roman scale and was like, yeah, that'll fit a Saxon.
Oh, like Squamata. Yeah. It does look like Squamata, to be fair. I don't think it's the shape of it.
There's limited evidence for it in where is it? It's Carolingia, and
some of the manuscripts, the early manuscripts.
Although that could be argued that's a holdover from earlier copies.
Yeah.
However, there was some finds. Was it Bohemia? I think.
Oh yeah.
Or it might have been further east. But there were some fragments of iron that can be interpreted as scales.
We'll have to come back to him because I know that he's a topic all by himself.
Hmm.
But just in this picture here with the protagonist and his crew, fur shoulders, leather armor in various kind of style, like these weirdly protecting the shoulders on the guys on his right, but not anything vital really.
Oh, what got me is the guy to his right. If you stabbed underneath, it would be fine. It would just cut his arm off.
What was it you said? A spear trap.
That axe is on the guy on the left. Look how big that axe head is. It's bigger than the entire.
Oh my god! Yeah, it is.
It's bigger than me.
It's bigger than the main characters. Yeah, that's ridiculous.
I'm fairly confident though. I've seen that axe head as a bottle opener.
It is like one of those cheap Wish things, isn't it?
So what they've probably done is they've sat in the office and they've went, oh, we need an axe. And he's picked his bottle opener up and they've scanned it in. That's exactly what that is.
Yeah,
I know
what
you mean. Yeah.
Primary inspirations, Grimfrost merchandise.
But no, okay. But this isn't even Grimfrost. This reminds me more of Arm Street.
Oh no!
Yeah, I know what you mean. The like
Grimfrost used a lot of the traders that like GDFB used and such. So like, I'm not defending them because the quality's shit. It is what it is. But at least they sometimes resemble like a shape, just really, really inflatedly large. These don't resemble any shape I can think of. None of them.
No,
not the belts,
they're like,
not the armor.
They're like the axes, especially. A lot of them are like. They've just inflated, like a balloon, inflated the other axe types. Like they're a balloon, a balloon axe, and someone's gone and overinflated them a little bit.
Actually, have any of you picked up a LARP safe axe?
Oh yeah, I know some of the LARP safe ones look like that as well. To be fair, that's a good point.
That's what I'm getting here. They look like LARP safe weapons. They're exaggerated. They look like they'd be blunt and bounce off, a foam shield. They just look comically oversized and exaggerated.
It's not unheard of for big company stuff. You look at the latest Modern Warfare. A lot of the guns you use in the game, and I know this is kind of off topic, but if you actually like take it out of the 3D model and look underneath, it's airsoft magazines.
Yes, they've been doing this for a long time. There was
it's not unheard of to have obviously that sort of stuff.
I think it was the first Modern Warfare. The AK-74U was actually a compressed, like one of those cheap compressed airsoft guns. Like it was squished in one direction, and they just copied it. It also had the wrong magazine, for example. It was very, very strange that they directly copied this airsoft replica.
I found the authentic item.
Oh,
Do you want to see it? Do you want it? Yeah. Look on the right. All right. Look at the girl, and then look at her weapon. Spear. That's probably the only authentic thing in that.
Yeah,
and even then,
so blurry.
I know, and it's such a big spearhead.
Well, spearheads were quite big, to be fair.
Yeah, no, I've seen some fairly large ones, but that's about the only thing there I can see that like.
Yeah. Apart from
colours.
objective things like the fact there is a sea and a sky.
Is that Bamber Castle though?
It is. So if you look at the pictures, look at the picture 2 below. I sent a picture of Bamber Castle.
Yeah, we'll get that comparison at this point.
Yeah, bearing in mind, Bamber Castle now doesn't even look like Bamber Castle 500 years ago. There have been a lot of like 17th century onwards developments.
It looks pretty cool,
including they completely changed the orientation at which the entrance was facing. The entrance 500 years ago was a completely different one. The other side of the castle.
So that castle there is probably at best 1,000 years too advanced for this picture.
At least. At least 1,000 years too advanced.
I mean, I would forgive Ubisoft everything if we zoomed into that picture and saw that there was the modern 5G mast sticking out of it.
Oh, I'm looking at it. Like, then my experience. I'm limited in my experience, as you guys know. Like, I know decent kit, I know shit kit, and I know certain things. But that castle does look 14th century. Like, the main keep.
It's Norman. Yeah, it's a Norman castle.
Not 14 then, so earlier, but you can tell because it looks a lot like my local castle, I suppose, Caerphilly Castle.
It also looks a bit like Norwich Castle. If you've ever seen the keep of Norwich Castle, it's very similar. Okay. And the keep of the Tower of London is very similar to that as well. They love their square style keeps, but
yeah. That's a shout, actually. Yeah.
What gets me is, I mean, yes. Bebumber, as we know, as the Last Kingdom fans will know, I hate saying those words, but it has
Uhtred
to be
von
said.
Battenberg.
That's it. That Bebbanburg was a settlement. Exactly where the castle stands, there was a burh, but it would have had a wooden palisade, and it would have basically been a town inside a wooden palisade. It wouldn't have been much more. It would have simply been a burh. And I think that's that. I mean, this is really, really digging, because there are far lower hanging fruits in this game than that. But
I have.
still.
Sorry to dwell on this, but I've just thought of something now as I look at that picture. Actually, and this is just that again out of curiosity more than anything else. Would we not expect for a castle of that size to see settlement outside though? So on this right side, would we not expect maybe not a docks because you're too close inside, I guess. But
in period, I wouldn't see why not. Maybe say for example a market or maybe other
I would
settlement.
point out that we are on the seaside, so I personally wouldn't put a settlement there because flooding, storms, that kind of thing. On the other side, which is cropped, we can't say there is or isn't.
Well, I suppose they would have known they were safer within the walls of the burh from all these effects.
So, just before we go into a direct comparison between historical and not, which we've got a rather lovely picture in a second, something we kind of commented upon in the preamble, like leading up to the actually recording this, was that something that developers and designers seem to forget is when they've got all these people in these costumes, this is what they would have been wearing at sea for weeks, days to weeks at a time. So all these guys in leather and furs,
oh god,
they would have been soaking wet. And I don't know if anyone's had a wet fur draped around them. It's disgusting. It stinks.
Or imagine a wet fur, but now it's got salt all over it.
Yeah.
Now it's got when you come out of the sea and you've got the salt corrosion on your hands and all over your clothes, and you have to spray them down because otherwise they'll become permanently affected by it. If you're wearing a waterproof watch, you got to spray that down because it constantly gets corrosion. Now imagine that's stuck in the fibers of a sheet of fur. It's all just in there and nasty. That would not be good.
Leather armor as well.
Yeah, it's.
Don't you talk smack about leather armor?
But they had the cowls though.
So let's get to a direct comparison between Ivor and what he should really look like. Now granted, he's a Viking assassin, so he's going to be somewhat accessorized compared to an actual.
I mean, we can allow concessions for that. It's we're not saying that he isn't still an Assassin's Creed character. That's the thing.
And I would stress these reconstructions aren't 100% accurate. They're still relatively grounded in fantasy, but they are better than what we have.
Yeah. So these.
Go on.
Sorry. Yeah. No. You go ahead.
I've just realised that. So I'm watching through the trailer as well, just to bring myself back up to speed once more with it. And I've just realised something. It is a nitpick though. So he's got a hidden blade, as we've seen in the trailer.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the Viking hidden blade must be more advanced than the medieval hidden blade because he still has his fingers.
Oh, that's an interesting point. Oh, yeah.
For those of you that played the old ones, you had to chop your finger off.
For those who haven't, this is like a deep lore thing. Leonardo da Vinci invented the hidden blade that you didn't have to have your fingers chopped off for. Before that, all the hidden blades you required a finger to be removed. Basically. And
it's actually the only thing I can see the difference in this one as opposed to the other is it's not underhand, it's overhand. So it's actually it's in a more aggressive method. So if we watch when he stabs the guy later on, he stabs him overhand kind of into it.
And how the hell is he activating that? From an engineering standpoint,
I can't see. As I'm watching through it, I just noticed I just noticed that was all. So
that's a fascinating point.
And
And
I'll be curious to see what other assassin items like he'll have, considering he's a Viking. And my understandings were assassins weren't really, they were obviously common, but they weren't really looked upon very favorably.
Assassins were seen very much as people you didn't want to interact with. If people were known to be these people, they were often outcast from society.
So if we pull up the picture of the direct comparison now,
the Valhalla.
Yes. So this is courtesy of Patrick Robinson, who's one of the contributors. He posted a few memes and bits and pieces on Anglo-Saxon posting, and took the time to put these together in Photoshop. Now, look at the difference and how much unnecessary bollocks is on the in-game character compared to historical. And you can't tell me that the historical one looks less interesting or less capable of fighting or any of that kind of thing.
I have a close friend of mine in the US, and we've always spoken about Viking stuff. He's always been interested in it, and I've got him in touch with the Omsburg of USA, and he sent me like a couple of questions when this came out. And funny enough, when I seen these pictures making the rounds on Facebook, I sent them to him, and I'll bring up his response to you right now. One moment. So I said the bottom is authentic-ish, relating to the bottom one. He said, I get why a game would have more aesthetic, though the top one looks more badass. And that's from a complete. That's someone who has
strange.
No interest. Like no interest is a wrong word, but no understanding of a historical aspect. He's just a gamer.
It's interesting because I just don't think it does. I mean, I really like the knowing as well how something as simple as the axes functioning. Right, the guy on the bottom is clearly using the most up to date sleek axes that they had. The axes at the time, they weren't just cleaving machines. I mean, some of them could have been, but a lot of them were very well engineered. A lot of them were very thought out and sleek. And it's just it's laughable.
The speed at which you can wield a Danax is phenomenal, and that is largely down to the extraordinarily thin profile of the axe. It was almost like a sword point, that horn on it. The over engineering of those, they look like straight out of Warcraft. The ones he's holding.
Yes.
We were speaking about him, and someone said to me before, "Are they actually from the Warcraft movie?" And I was like, "That's not a bad shout." Yeah, maybe.
they do look like it. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. I remember I went. I won't name a society like I'm in, but part of the society's rules, you have to have a test for a Danax. And I remember, like, when I was interested in doing it, I had a Danax. Like, I picked one up from just a random trader, and no maker's mark on it. I couldn't tell you what it was. But when I took it home, this Danax, bloody heavy. It was ridiculous. And I remember thinking, I've got no interest in wielding this thing. And then one of my friends gave me a Danax. I can't remember the name of the maker, but it was incredibly light, and the blade was probably slightly thinner than my sword blade, but within the society regs. And I remember mounting that on Ash, and the whole Danax was easier to wield than my sword.
Have you ever
probably lighter.
Have you ever heard of a YouTuber called Knight Errant?
No, I haven't. No.
He's very good. He talks a lot about this concept, which is the correct reproductions and finding flaws in bad reproductions and assuming it's a flaw in the original. So, for example, you get a copy of a Danax that's a flawed reproduction, and you assume that all Danaxes in period and now must have been heavy, cumbersome things. Whereas in reality, a good reproduction of an original will tell you far more about the original.
I don't understand why you wouldn't use like a nice looking real Danax I had the one in there's a Danax found in the Thames, a Danax head. If memory serves.
Oh, there's quite a few. I think there's about is it 5 or 6 in that deposit?
I'm not sure, but I had one made from Jason at Wheeling Forge.
Yeah.
And I remember I had them made because we got them as a group buy, and a couple of the guys wanted them, so I messaged him as I knew Jason. And I remember holding this Danax, and it was light. It was so light and so nice to play with. And I remember speaking to him and saying, okay, can you tell me a little bit more about the original it was exactly based on? I'll try and dig the stuff out and give it to you at some point. And
he said it's Museum of London most likely.
As it was, like the Danax he done, the only differences were the edges were round to fit in with the major society regs.
Of course.
So that's the only difference. The weight was probably about the same. And just thinking about that, just I think people underestimate, and I don't know how many of you guys, apart from Shire Eve maybe, but go out and do like competitive fighting at events or even display fighting. Actually, you swinging around a heavy thing, you're going to struggle after 10-20 seconds sometimes.
Well, and what I've got a copy of one of the London ones as well that's sharp, and it's made by Stu Macon of Jackhammer Forge. It's a wonderful, wonderful piece. And again, this is similar to what the rates of the original would have been, and it is maneuverable as all hell. It is incredible. And I can see it being used in that context. You can see it being used as a viable weapon because it's very maneuverable.
This discussion will probably lead us quite nicely onto what the content of the trailer and the battle scene, because I know we'll have a fair amount to say on that. So just to close up on the kit, because there's one or two things I want to pick up on here, and then move on to the mountain. But we'll get back to that. That hero belt, just that an absurd.
Oh, the corset thing.
Yeah. And there's so much there that is wrong, and it's very clear looking at it compared to something that still has fantastical elements and still has artistic license, but is still very much extrapolated from what we do know. It's clear that the design process here, and this is what upsets me most, is not that they started at the bottom picture and then went, let's make some creative design choices to make them look a little different. They've gone straight to the bottom denominator and just gone, hey, this is what they look like in modern media. This is what we're going to do.
Yeah,
they've gone straight to that.
It's because they know they can sell out. That's the problem. It's because they know the majority of people don't care.
It's the Vikings TV show in game form, but I would argue worse, because at least some of the weapons in the TV film, the TV show, look kind of plausible.
Yeah, I mean they don't use fantasy axes. Oh, they don't use oversized axes.
Yeah, exactly. The shapes of some of the axes they use are a bit fruity, but
they're all human-sized.
Yes, exactly. They are of a size that would be functional.
And although their shields are very obviously LARP safe, you can see them wobble in a few scenes. At least they're the right type. They're center grip with a boss. Image of him rather kindly letting the woman and her child children.
Oh yes, because Viking's good, Saxon bad. Am I right?
I mean, I'll forgive that because it's the protagonist, and we're supposed to
absolutely. I mean, you are looking at it through the lens of that character. Yeah, but the idea that Vikings would just let people go when they were sacking the village.
No,
I mean the bigger crime. I mean that's plot element. We don't know what the story's going to be. The bigger crime is looking at his shield. It's strapped to his arm. That's not how Viking shields worked, and that would render them almost useless. in the way that the Vikings were supposed to use those shields. The whole point of the center grip is because the shields were quite light, they're certainly sturdy, but the idea was to get them to glance weapons off rather than, bluntly take the force and shunt it off. You're supposed to deflect them. You can't do that nearly as effective with a strapped shield. And I'm sure we can link to that rather famous or infamous video of that.
Yes, Russian... I'm trying to find what it would be called.
I'll find
it. But people in our circles know what we're talking about. It's a video of two. Well, from what I can tell is one rather uncaring Russian combat trainer and an unsuspecting student of his.
Yeah,
and it's
straight through the shield.
Yeah,
and the shield was a shield with this grip. Demonstrating exactly why you wouldn't use it that way and you wouldn't strap it that way.
But bear in mind, it also serves as a reminder that you should never, ever train with sharps. If you're training as a combat style, not as stage combat or anything like that. If you're training as a combat style, you should never train with sharps because it is simply unsafe.
At the end of the day, they're weapons. They're designed to kill people. It's, you don't swing at someone unless you are going to try to kill them, especially not with a sharp.
Exactly.
So I'm looking back at this image of him with the shield. There's a penannular brooch holding his weave belt together at the in the middle.
Oh no!
Can you see that?
Well, anyway.
Oh no, that's one of the cheap ones you get from China for about £3.
I mean, dear.
We could spend all day on. There's very obvious things wrong with his kit, and I think we've covered most of.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it doesn't. For those who know, it doesn't have to be said.
Yeah. The battle. Let's get to the battle and the setting, because we've got the guys raiding the south of England and trying to establish a colony, and they come up against Alfred the Great, which is Alfred the Great again, in entirely the wrong kit for the.
He looks like a 14th century French king.
And again, Patrick Robinson provides us with a rather
This is actually better than the first one he did, in my opinion. It's more accurate than the first one he did. The crown I'm not so sure about, but the general the most of the things there he did pretty well. And
he's in like a longhouse style, smaller.
Yeah, he's actually in a king's hall rather than in.
Is he like a little bit late, like as well? I know we don't know when this game takes off, but I believe I've read somewhere it's at the start of the VA age. So isn't
at the
as
start?
Far as my understanding,
yeah, Alfred would be a bit late. Yeah, because it would have been Egbert, I think, at the start. Or even Ayla.
At least in this picture, in this remaster, he's not using a coin to stamp the seal.
Yes. Well, I mean, if we look at I'll put it up in the video. But if we look at the picture of him stamping the seal on, there are a number of. In fact, I've been studying a lot about sealing methods and so on recently, and that's one of the things. It shouldn't have annoyed me so much, but it really did. He uses a 17th century style sealing wax and a 17th century style sealing stamp with the face of a coin on it, a period coin, instead of an actual seal matrix with period sealing wax. Which is absurd. If you know anything about the specific area, it's daft.
It's one of those things where they chose to use an actual design from the time, the coin, but in entirely the wrong context and in a way that doesn't make sense.
Well,
why would the king stamp something with a coin of him when he would have, because anyone could make
anyone could forge that. Yeah, it's so dumb. The other thing is, they also went to the effort of understanding how things were sealed. The ribbon going down from the page is authentic. That was a thing that was done. But then they decide to do the seal completely wrong. Which just, it beggars belief. If it was all wrong and they just sealed it as a letter, that's one thing. But they get it half right and just half so wrong at the same time.
This kind of comes back to my point I made about how they go on about consulting experts, and I think what is a bit shady is that they say experts, but they don't specify what those people are experts in, because they may have consulted an expert on the language, the names, and that side of things. Which obviously does
the socio-economic side.
Exactly, which doesn't then translate to kit, timelines, who was king at the time, etc., etc. But by saying that you've got experts, people, and a blanket term, people assume that you've consulted them on every aspect of the game.
This was the same thing that happened with the Vikings, where they again claimed they had experts. And what happened then is people started making articles years ago saying, this is why the Vikings is correct in its material culture, when it was just completely wrong. Because they believed that these experts knew what they were talking about. I mean, for example, me and Guthrum are involved in the making of a game called Hammerheart. If you're right for me to mention it here,
I'll tell you, we will give that a proper plug at the end as well. But yeah, by all means, mention that.
So I mean, there's 4 of us on the project. Bennett being the main guy behind it, and somehow, with the 4 of us, we've made what I would consider to be, and I think what most of us would consider to be, a better representation of the period than the whole of Ubisoft.
And the thing is, it's not like we're not being creative. A very, very good point would be the helmets we've done. What we've done is we've taken the known types of helmets, like the spectacle helmets, the nasal helmets, and we've broken them down into individual components. These individual components they have little variations, like a slightly different flare.
You can almost procedurally generate helmets.
That is exactly what we're aiming for. That way, you don't have to produce endless reams of all this awesome-looking, well, quote-unquote, awesome-looking helmets and stuff, when you can just make tiny variations and have unlimited numbers of helmets.
Talking of helmets, what about the mountain? For those of you who've seen the trailer, you must know who we're referring to. The absolutely massive Anglo-Saxon clad in scale armor.
Quotation mark Anglo-Saxon.
Meant to be Anglo-Saxon, although he's wearing a Vendel, what's meant to be a Vendel period surveyor helmet.
Vendel again in quotation marks.
It's
closer to Vendel than it is to Saxon.
Oh yes, absolutely. I mean, the strangest thing is we'll put up a close up of the helmet here. I didn't even notice this because in earlier sections where it's not close up, you can't see the helmet, the bottom of the helmet, because it's covered by a cloak. But it has a bottom faceplate.
How does he breathe?
How does he breathe? But also,
that's making me asphyxiate just looking at it.
But also,
what got me as well is he can't look down. The man cannot turn his head downwards. And anyone who does later period or wears any kind of functional plate armor will understand this. You can't have anything that goes down from your face because it will just dig into your neck when you try to look down. Which is, you can actually do that, but then what you need to have is some kind of breaths or vision slots in the bottom of the faceplate so you can look through them down. But he literally cannot look down. All he will see if he tries to look down is the inside of his helmet, which means he's so prone to tripping over things.
Especially with the spectacle helmet, with those big, broad plate, those big broad bands on the grima on the faceplate.
Yeah,
that's bad enough.
Yeah, yeah.
A mouth plate.
I had chainmail on my nasal helmet, but all the way around. So my chainmail went from the sides of my helmet, obviously around the back, and then in front of my nasal guard, and in one hoop. And I had to cut it at Volin after the first day because I felt like I was going to die.
Yeah,
I cannot imagine what it would be like having his helmet. And mine's not even a nasal.
I'm the same with my bever. It does get hot. But yeah, it's just it beggars belief. The people who designed this helmet clearly have no understanding of how functional armor in a lot of these games isn't a concept anyway. But yeah, it's just strange.
I think I can see what they were trying to do actually. Hang on, I'll pull up a picture.
So I noticed what you said earlier on. I'm glad that it got brought up before I
brainstorm. I've realised what they're trying to do.
Go on, Hamish.
Oh no, I was going to say it got brought up earlier on. I noticed that the helmet, when I first seen it, was Vendel inspired. So I was looking at that and I was like, it looks like they've taken a picture of like Mr. Bunker,
Matt Bunker, yeah,
and his fancy kit, and then they've also looked at Ross, and they've like done this cute combination of Ross and Bunker. And they created this Roman Anglo-Saxon.
Yeah, if they did dance from Dragon Ball Z, that's what you'd end up with.
Yeah, I was literally like, I remember looking at it. I was like, I wonder if someone's going to make. I'm not creative enough, as we said last time, but like, I wonder if someone's going to make a meme of that, because that would be the perfect.
Because he's got Ross Cronshaw's face plates, and then he's got
and
Matt
his scales, sort of.
Yeah, yes, of course, his and
then
Squamata.
Yeah, it is very different at the bottom and stuff. Anyway,
oh, like, stylistically, of course.
When I seen it, I was like, "Holy yeah, it's Bunker and Ross, goddamn Roman Saxons." But,
early Saxons.
It does look.
It's early Saxon, but that is a late medieval sword.
Oh, the great sword. Well, you say it's a late medieval sword. It's a fantasy version of a style of late medieval sword that wasn't used how he's using it.
Yeah. I was again referring to the same guy I spoke to earlier on, my friend. He said, "Oh, how come I've never seen in any of your Instagram videos like a two-handed sword?" And like with deep sigh and regret, I was like, "I haven't found any." Do you know how I would love a two-handed sword to be found? I would probably jump on that, but it just does not exist.
It's a pipe dream. It
doesn't fit the warfare though. Like people say, oh, there might be one out there because someone would have done it. But you look at the warfare of the period, it doesn't fit it.
And the only examples
we have of two-handed weapons like that are Dane axes, but even then they still slung a shield.
Yeah.
And the truth is that's also very late. That's 11th century, 1066. That's a later impression of what the warriors of the period did. In this point in time, two-handed weapons just weren't seen.
I'll tell you this. I had a guy in my first group buy a two-handed sword, very much like that actually, and we said, well, is that Viking? Is that Saxon? Us being 2 years into reenactment at this point, and he tried to pass off that it was a Saxon king's sword.
Shit.
So
yes.
I wish my
works for Ubisoft after that.
Yeah, because Saxon kings, they didn't make nicer swords. They just made the same quality swords but bigger.
Yeah, more material means higher status, doesn't it?
Can you imagine though, wearing let's say for argument's sake, all right? Let's say everything he's wearing is authentic, okay? Obviously it's not, but can you imagine wearing all that, okay, and then trampling down a hill? But you can't see because you've only got two little tiny slits. You can't look down,
and you can't move your head down.
All right, you can't look down, so you're just gonna have to run. You're just gonna have to run and hold on to someone as you go down, and then swinging that sword for any period of time.
And then someone dies in front of you, and you trip over their corpse.
Yeah,
because you can't look to step over them.
I mean, blow by blow of the battle, as I saw it, was the Vikings rock up in their ships. a trope as old as time. The Anglo-Saxons burned them out of the ships with fire arrows, which A, didn't exist. B, if they did,
the evidence we have for them, I believe, is actually on the other side of the Vikings having them. There's a couple of examples that were probably fire arrows, but not fire cages. They were just sticks that you would wrap.
Yeah. So you've got these fire arrows, which are debatable. You've got them setting fire to ships, which A, are soaking wet because we just saw them come for a fucking storm. B, their sails are made of wool, which even when bone dry are fire retardant. So inexplicably, they've managed to burn the Vikings out of their ships. So they make landfall, having to swim ashore, stumble across. Far more of a rush than they'd planned. Excellent. That's
already
perfect.
Tired from sailing, already covered in salt corrosion and water.
So they're now scattered at the bottom of the hill, and any sensible individual, and bear in mind, we're talking about Alfred the Great here, and although I know it's one of his generals leading the battle, but it's
an inspired tactician.
Yeah. You stand at the top of that hill and loose the arrows down continually and force them up to your lines. What we see instead is the Anglo-Saxons not rush down en masse, but a first wave of them running down in loose order to fight the Vikings one-on-one.
Not a line, just guys.
This is referred to.
I don't know. Sorry, go on.
I was going to say that in particular you see in a lot of movies and video games, and someone years ago called it the 300 fight scene.
Yeah.
Go back and watch that movie, or watch any movie with battles, and instead of using what you're given, so a shield and a spear in like our context or whatever, they rush in and have battles. So you'll have people in front, people behind, people to your left and right.
Yeah, they did it like the Vikings TV show as well.
Yeah, can you imagine? And Braveheart as well. Go back and bloody watch that terrible movie.
I'd rather not.
I loved HBO's Rome in I think it was the first episode. They show the legionaries, Lucius Vorenus and Apollo fighting in ranks, cycling the ranks forwards.
Where one will walk back to the back and then another one will push forward, right?
That was beautifully done. And this kind of comes back to what I said about the design process. It's the lazy, tired thing we've seen 100 times over. So you're not just being wrong. You're being wrong in exactly the same way 100 other people have been.
Yeah, at least be unique.
But somebody said to me in a chat I had last night with some members of my group, is this an Anglo-Saxon trait that if they see hills, they must run down them? Referencing, of course, 66 and the Battle of Hastings. So maybe that's why the Anglo-Saxons were, have this compulsion to run down.
I'm semi-healthy. I'd consider myself like a relatively healthy person, but I've had to run down that bloody hill where we do the reenactment in chainmail.
We did it in last November actually. Me and I think our group were basically the left-hand flank. So it was all of us yeeting down the hill, which is simultaneously a terrifying and exhilarating experience.
I remember sprinting down that hill, and I couldn't stop myself, and I run and jump and onto a French guy, and I have to this day no idea what he said, but I know for a fact he wasn't happy.
So we get to this, they're charging, there's this great melee, and you can't tell who's winning, who's, and that's fairly accurate. You've not, at that kind of level of skirmish, it's very difficult to tell who's...
Yeah, after skirmish breaks down, that's definitely a reasonable thing to see.
This Anglo-Saxon general thinks that in the swirling melee where there's people dying left, right, and centre and kind of tripping over each other, that's the time to send down a dude to engage our hero one-on-one.
But bearing in mind that was done. If you parlayed, you might offer a battle of the champions to determine the battle. This we have sources for. But a battle of the champions, But you would do that as parlay.
Yeah. He just nods to the guy and goes, "Right, you see that guy in, I don't know, 5 to the left, 10 deep.
That looks no less unique than anyone else on the battlefield.
Go and kill him. Go and walk through all these people fighting with arrows still being loosed, spears being thrown, and hundreds of other Vikings on the field. Go by yourself and go and kill him." Great. Somehow he makes it to him intact. Gets stabbed through the thigh with no visible effect.
And it's just like, oh, I'm going to remove this massive foreign object of a sword and just throw it on the floor. I'm not going to bleed out.
He's manly. Stop.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. He's manly. He's the big man. He's the big man.
Yeah. Chad.
Yeah, God,
this is how Kjell felt when he was commenting on your post.
But yeah, he then beats around our guy and takes an axe hit to the gut and just tanks it like a champ. Looks back to his general for confirmation to kill the guy, even though he'd been sent down there to do.
Already engaging in them.
Gets stabbed in the eye in the most ridiculous way. And at that point in the trailer, I just thought, this is tedious. This is so tedious.
I did actually like that reference to the stabbing in the eye. It's not what you might think. It's not a Harold reference, but spectacle helms are absolutely terrible.
Yeah, they were actually they stopped using them for one of those reasons.
They are like a funnel that says "poke me here."
Yeah.
We tested out some chainmail armor. I know it's not relevant to scale what the Centurion's wearing, I call him. But we tested out some chainmail armor against real blows, so sharp swords, sharp spears, sharp arrows. And I know the Russian guy in question actually has his video on YouTube of a sharp arrow, and he's inside the chainmail, and the arrow it doesn't go through basically. The problem is, I think that people underestimate what normal standard armor can give you in protection. That axe hit would have winded him like mad.
It's blunt force trauma. Mail doesn't stop blunt force trauma at all.
Absolutely, yeah. It wouldn't. I said this to my friend. I don't think it would have killed him, but depending on how hard it was, he's on his knees. Combined that with he should have been on his knees.
That could have crushed his fucking kidney.
Yeah, man.
I think that probably would have killed him. It would have given him such internal damage that would have offed him. Maybe not instantly, but that would have killed him.
I mean, he managed to stand after getting his thigh torn open with a sword.
Well, that's it. I was more
sent from the future.
I always thought with the video that he should have been on the ground.
You've hit the nail on the head about the blunt force trauma. It's a general thing with armor. Even plate armor doesn't stop the full blunt force trauma of a blow. If you get thwacked in the chest, you are going backwards. And it's just an inauthentic view of how armor works.
Yeah. It's a common misconception when people think the more you got on, the more of a tank you are, but it doesn't work that way at all.
Yeah, there's a reason that the ways of taking down armored warriors were basically equivalent to a rugby scrum. You are better taking down your opponent with grappling techniques than you are at trying to stab them through their armor.
So I think to summarize, because I've got the feeling that we could talk on this for another hour still.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think, in summary, our problem isn't so much that it's wrong. It's just wrong in all the old ways that we've seen again and again and again. And to be so tiresome, so tediously wrong in this day and age where we do know more about the Viking Age than ever, and know more history than we did, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. We always know more. To just go for the bottom denominator, and not even attempt, not like I say with the design process, they went straight to the Viking series Last Kingdom design aesthetic. It's just boring.
It's tired.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's, I think the it's so overdone. It's done to death at this point. And there's also this bit at the end of the video that echoes so much of this like cringe quote Viking culture that you see, and it's like hashtag like a Viking, and it's just no, it's nothing like a Viking.
The audacity to use the words historical accuracy in your marketing and then produce this is
the issue, isn't it? More than anything else, and it's what irks me about any video game in question. Because if you portray something as historical and then you have obvious fantasy,
fantasy's fine.
But it's when you portray it as historical though. If I go and I'll use it as an example, I play a lot of military video games because I enjoy the simulation. So when I play these video games, if I go into my thing, okay, that's Milsim, and then I boot up, I go inside, and I don't know, nothing's correct, I guess. It's wrong. Or a better example that's more popular now, I guess, is Mordhau or Mountain Blade. If somebody said those games are 100% historical accurate, they're not. They're fantasy. Both of them.
And they're not trying to be accurate as well.
Exactly, yeah.
And yet somehow they're more accurate than this.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's like that God of War quote where they're saying, "Oh, we're more historical than God of War." God of War, and I haven't played much of it, but I've
God of War is about mythology, isn't it?
No, I played the older ones, and I know about the new one. I've watched people play them, but it's mythology and the artwork for God of War. I'm going to be honest, I really, really like the art style.
Yeah,
really
I have no problem with God of War because I don't think they're trying to say this is history.
100%, I agree. And even the older ones with like the Greek mythology, like it was a laugh. They never ever said it was historical. It was it's mythology, like you said. It just having it. You know what? I could go on about Ubisoft because they piss me off because they have some of the best technology in the world for recreating stuff. Look at the Notre Dame Cathedral in Assassin's Creed
when
Unity.
It burnt down, and
they gave the game away. They're giving away the game for free at that time when it burnt down, and they had in the world that a video game studio had the best reproduction of it in their 3D modeling software, and they were we're obviously able to try and recreate Notre Dame now based on their information. They've got the option to. The last Assassin's Creed game I played was 2 that I gave a shit for.
I actually really enjoyed Unity because I got it for free. I did play it, and I thought it was pretty good.
It shows they've got the technology to create good stuff. My missus has played Odyssey. She said she really enjoyed it. Some of my friends have played the one before this, the one in the desert in Egypt. They said the game itself is phenomenal, and a couple of the boys that went to the pyramids said it looks like you're there. And they gave it away to teach the schools, and they go away from this where you could take it away and you could teach kids in school. Man, you know what? I would love to have had video games in school teaching me history.
I learned a lot about Italy when I played the early Assassin's Creed games.
Myself too.
And I remember when I went to Rome, the weirdest thing was knowing the layout. Genuinely, I mean, even though it was like 500 years out of date, you could still tell the layout in modern Rome.
But that's the point. Like, if you go to these viewpoints or whatever it was, it's been so long since I played them. But you go to like the major points of interest in number 2. And you could see like where you went, and it had a little link where it showed you what it looked like in modern day, and it was like being at the same place. And then
it's crazy.
Retreat with Woofer Simulator 2021, and it I don't know, it irks me. Will I buy the game? Probably, but it does irk me a little bit.
I won't buy the game until it's like £5 on CD keys.
I'm going to buy it because it's Viking, isn't it? And because my Twitch stream has paid for it already for me. But like, I want to play the game so I could probably shred it when it comes out.
Yeah.
So, with all that said, I think we've made our position very clear.
Yeah. Should we get onto the Q&As then?
Yeah. So we'll crack on with some questions because we did that last time, and we're hoping to make it a regular feature. What we've got.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Oh, it is a serious question, actually, and it is somewhat relevant to this. So, if you were making a video game, all right, and your character at the start, you're making your character, and you could only pick one weapon, okay, and these are going to be the choices. So you could have a Dane axe,
Yep.
With a shield on your back, I guess. I don't know. A sword and a shield, a spear and a shield, or a single handed spear and a double-handed spear. What would you have? What would be your choice?
Spear, because I can use it for hunting as well.
Two-handed, yeah.
I'm going to say game logic. I would say what I'd use in Warband when we were playing that. I'd say in total I'd get a spear and a sword, maybe a couple of javelins if that's an option.
Go for him.
Sorry, it cut out. What was the question?
If you had to choose between having a spear and a shield, just a two-handed spear, a sword and a shield, or let's say an axe and a shield, I guess. What would be your choice? Like you're playing a video game, and that's it. You can once you pick it, you're locked. That's you.
Right. It depends on the game. Depends what I'm doing, I suppose. I'd rather have an axe if it were a crafty game, but I'd rather have a spear if it was a war game. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can do a whole lot more with an axe than I can do a spear.
It's curious. I've asked that question to some people recently, and it's curious seeing their answers as well. So I genuinely wanted to know from you guys.
You want to know so badly, you cut ahead of all the other people who put their questions to us before you did.
Yes.
Like a gentleman.
Right.
Man. So,
should we ask Ross's question then first?
Yeah.
How many fucks could a fuckbringer bring if a fuckbringer could bring fucks? Yes. Moving on.
Yeah.
What's your favourite non-combat living history activity to research or perform? And this is for all of us. Goatworn?
Non-combat living history activity to research or perform. For me, it's showing how the shields were constructed. Because people kind of, they glance over all the shield in favor of a lot more interesting and sparkly things like swords and mails and helms. But I think the construction of the shield is kind of vital to understanding why there wasn't a light armor, in video game terms, because once you realize that this thing was easy to build, and pretty much until you cut your way through it to the point where it's split in half, which takes an awful lot of effort, it was still functional right up until the point it was broken. And it took an awful lot to get through to that stage, and it's such a versatile piece of kit. So yeah, that's what I like showing off to people in a non-com, circumstance.
That's really interesting. And Tom, what was your answer?
Blacksmithing.
Because you do quite a lot of that, don't you?
I haven't actually done any blacksmithing on a living history environment because, as I mentioned in the last episode, my blacksmithing setup, my forge, and all the stuff that goes with that is it's still a work in progress, still being done. But actually showing people tools, explaining to them, I do it because it's my favourite thing to do. Because I'm passionate about tools. I'm passionate about how they're made, how they function, why certain things are designed in a certain way, and explain all these neat little tricks and stuff you could do with them. I'm passionate about that. That's why I do it.
Nice. And what about you, Justison?
Don't have any LH stuff at the moment that I'm trying. I did ever so briefly attempt to try and recreate maybe a merchant kind of tent, but to actually sell items at events. That didn't last ever so long, however. If I was thinking about it, I'm slowly getting into repairing some spears because we tend to break a lot of them in Eastern, and Dane axes. So I would, and I'm aiming for maybe using that as part of kind of soft kit personality, but I haven't really looked into it too much. To be honest.
Suppose if you can do it at events in front of the public, that would be quite a good thing to do, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I remember at Volin, I fixed a couple of spears there, and the public actually kind of crowded around and was watching what I was doing. Which it was nice to see, but it wasn't, it wasn't authentic, so I can't claim that to be a. But yeah, I can't claim it to be an authentic part, I guess.
Well, I think there definitely would have been, a sort of, even if it wasn't a job in and of itself, people would have been doing that kind of thing. And I think that's a really interesting, even if it's, not as in depth, I think it's still really interesting to show. And so I guess for myself then, as the name suggests, I'm putting together a portrayal of an 11th century high reeve. So that's writing up documents pertaining to the taxes, trading licenses, and so on, and also making sure that the laws are being followed on the markets and in the war camps, and fleshing out that impression itself as much as I can. Should we do the next question then?
Yeah. So this one's from Ben Harvey. What's your favourite Goatworn comic? Guthrum.
My favourite Goatworn comic, it has to be a Patreon exclusive. It would be the Eel comic. I really do love that comic.
My favourite is the first JoJo reference one, where Fuckbringer has a face.
Where he stands, yeah.
The you're approaching me one, yeah. That was really good.
That was a pain in the ass to
a bit higher quality than you're used to.
It was just getting it right enough.
The angles, yeah.
And making sure that it was still keeping into my style without just going full anime.
Yeah.
That was the nuance of it. But yeah, no, I'm glad people enjoyed that one.
There's been a couple. I think it's probably the ones with that medieval guy. He stuck a chair over the back of. I remember watching it and thinking, "Oh my god!" Because at the time, obviously, I hadn't met you and I hadn't really spoke to you, so I thought it was like some fantasy guys just down south doing some, probable terrible events, using chairs over people, and I kind of liked it.
Oh dear.
That's Hut Zhu, who is my friend from China, who you might have seen in the comic with the long boy spear. He asks, the spiciest, hottest food you've ever had. The man likes his spicy food. We kind of connected over that when he was studying down in over in England.
Nice.
So we'd cook for each other, and he'd cook quite. Oh man, the food he made was lush. I kind of miss both him and his cooking. But I think the spiciest thing I've ever had was at Torm, and somebody was selling this chili sauce in a skull, glass skull jar, and they said, "Look, here, you can have a sample. Fair warning, it's quite high on the scale. It's it is for people who enjoy spicy food, not for." So I said, "Oh no, I like spice as long as it's got some flavour." So I had a bit.
Yeah, dry peppery spice just isn't that good.
Yeah, and it tasted lovely. Quite a nice bit of heat, which then built and built and built, and then dissipated. But the problem is that it's whatever it was. It started a bar fight in my guts. With the sausage roll I'd eaten earlier, and I was bent double.
Was there a bit of ring sting?
No, it's just like a punch up in my intestine. It was really quite rough. I've not had that from any other spicy food. So yeah,
that's really strange. Must have been the specific strain. So, Guthrum, what about you?
Oh, it's probably a tie between two things I've tried in the past, and both of them I was spending time with my dad because he likes his spicy food as well. That's probably where I get it, because I quite like my spicy stuff too. First one I'm going to tell you about is a chili sauce that I bought him as a bit of a joke. I can't remember if it was for Christmas. I think it might have been his birthday, and it's just called Regret. Are you guys familiar with the Scoville unit?
Yes,
yeah, of course.
Measuring heat. Well, this is 12 million Scovilles.
Nice.
Ooh. That is, off the top of my head, I think that's twice the heat of a ghost pepper.
Yeah.
So that's probably the hottest thing that's ever passed my lips. However, for the sheer... That wasn't too bad. It was fairly short-lived because I only had a tiny little bit. I had a tiny little bit on the end of a tine of a fork, and that stung. But the thing for me that probably has the most pain for the longest time was again with my dad. It was kind of sort of like a stag do thing shortly before he got married, and we went to this Indian restaurant in Norwich. Can't remember the name of the place now. It's Ali something or other. Anyways, and I can't remember what curry it was, but I thought, oh, that sounds nice. It was kind of like one up in heat after a tikka. They must have got the things mixed up or something, because that was a plate of pain. I like my spicy food. I like my spicy food. Okay, I've got a fair asbestos mouth on me. I like food. I like spicy food, but this was pain. It was like it was gorgeous. Don't get me wrong; it was absolutely delicious. But after a little while, I just like, yeah, this is getting a bit hot. Okay, too hot. Stop! Ah, and yeah, it was just like I say, it was a lovely, lovely curry, but too damn hot for what it was. Wasn't a Rogan Josh, jalfrezi. That's what it was. It was a jalfrezi.
Ah, right. Yeah. So it's not meant to be stupidly hot.
No,
but...
it's not meant to be. It was.
Yeah.
I always see a jalfrezi as one up from a tikka.
Yeah. Somewhere between.
Chicken tikka masala. Yeah.
So what about you, Just Eastland?
I don't really do hot food very often. If I'm honest, I think the hottest thing I've ever had though was I don't know the name of the lady or her husband, but they frequent the reenactors market selling beef jerky and different types of jerkies.
Oh, Cowley.
The man, last time I seen the man, he had a big red Mohican.
Yeah, Cowley's Fine Foods.
That was probably it. And I remember I purchased some form of chili beef jerky.
Jerky.
It put me into the Royal Gwent, the local hospital.
Oh, damn.
Jesus.
I was about 12, maybe 13 at the time, and yeah. Damn. I went back and got some more last year. If it's the same person that was at the event we spoke about before, Shire Eve, I'm not sure. There was a lady there selling jerky. But I bought similar jerky off of her, and it wasn't as hot as I remember, but it was damn delicious. Maybe it was just because I was young. I'm not sure.
It may have been, yeah.
But I haven't seen him in many years, but I'm sure I've seen these misses around quite a few times selling the jerky. So
there's
online shops.
They're still doing well and they're still online. But that's some pretty terrible marketing for them, Just Eastern. Quite eagerly shouted their name out because I like them a lot, and you've just said that they put you in hospital.
I know. I went back and bought more.
I had quite a large order off Cowley's, and I got to say that was some of the nicest jerky I've ever tasted.
Yeah, I had some barbecue one they made. I bought at the Wolverhampton M4 fair or something about 2 years ago, and I just bought this massive kind of just chunk of it or something, whatever it was, and it was really, really good. Like their jerky is some of the best beef jerky, and I really like beef jerky. It's one of my favorite kind of snacks, I guess. And their jerky is some of the best.
Brittle pony is my favorite.
So, for myself, I think there's two in the running, like a couple of the others, and I have to ask: are you guys familiar with the expression "ring sting"?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I won't explain what it is. If you want to look it up, I'm sure there's an Urban Dictionary entry. So one of these gave me the worst ring sting I've ever experienced, and one of these was the most hot food that I've ever eaten. Now, the non-ring sting one was an absolutely gorgeous Naga chili curry that I got from the Indian restaurant back home, and it is a really good Indian restaurant. The guy who runs it is spectacular. He's an awesome dude, and they do wonderful food. And this was at a Christmas dinner, I think, with a group I was in at the time. Not a reenactment group, a social group. And I got this Naga curry, and bearing in mind I'd been there quite a few times, this was the hottest thing I'd eaten. And I'm sure I looked a bit heated by the end, with steam coming out my ears and everything. And yeah, the thing is, as me and Goatworn mentioned, it's getting the flavour behind it, and that's what was awesome about it. It tasted incredible. The second one was some sausages from Aldi. I think they were marketed as Carolina Reaper sausages. And it gave... I could only have 3 at a time. I tried 3. It was making my eyes water while it cooked in the pan. And it gave me ring sting for 2 days.
Oh my god.
And it was the worst ring sting I've ever experienced.
That could have just been Aldi, though.
No, Aldi are great.
Don't slag off Aldi.
Not to like.
Sorry, that's my go-to making people read. Is just slagging off Aldi, because everybody goes, "Not my Aldi."
I live about 10 meters from Aldi, so like I have to go there. But they are pretty good. But anyway, yeah.
Cutting down potential sponsors, you know that.
That Aldi money.
I actually pop quiz. Just eating things. Secured a contract with Aldi before for an old workplace he worked for. So I might have contacts. Okay, I might have contacts. Whether or not they want to be putting in with ring sting, right, though, we will have to be careful. I have got contacts.
So next question from Nick Hoyle, who commented on the channel last week. Love the podcast, guys. Really good work. Thank you very much. On the subject of runes, how much does it piss you off when somebody has got a tattoo or has carved English into Elder Futhark, then onto their kit with no research, or random runes for magic? And he says it personally for him, it makes him cringe into his salty balls.
I think we talked a little bit about the random magic runes thing last episode. The whole tossing pebbles onto the floor that have the Elder Futhark carved into them, and just thinking it means something.
I actually have a tattoo of a Vengvisir, not because it's Viking, it's because I like the look of it, and it's an inside joke. When I'm drunk,
you have one as well, don't you?
Home.
Yes, I have an Aegis armor surrounded by runes.
Oh, you've got the militant snowflake, as I like to call it.
Yeah, my magic snowflake. It's on the right shoulder, and surrounded by the Futhark.
The thing is, if the tattoos mean something to people, or even if you just like it because it's cool,
yeah,
then, I mean, a tattoo is a tattoo. You can, even in reenactment, you can just cover it up generally. Or even if you can't, people are understanding of modern tattoos. There are more egregious tattoos. You see, if you're talking about reenactment.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think the only thing with runes that pisses me off is when people start calling themselves seers and stuff.
Yeah.
And they're running around with makeup and fake blood. I've seen fake blood being used recently, which incredibly pissed me off. And then this post you related to last time, one of you boys mentioned it last time. I remember seeing that guy on Facebook talking about being a wizard or whatever he was trying to be. And that stuff pisses me off, but runes themselves don't, because it's the lack of education behind them. You can't translate English directly into German. You can't actually that's a bad example, but you can't translate English into Russian because the words don't make sense, just as you can't translate English into Elder Futhark.
Sorry, Old Norse it would be rather. Sorry.
Yeah. Because the words and the syllables and the letters, they don't line up. So if you're going to do it right. And when it's done right, it's cool. But it wouldn't be Elder Futhark anyway. It would be one of the younger branches.
Yeah, it would be if it's Anglo-Saxon, it would be the Anglo-Saxon Futhark as well.
Yeah.
So it has to be period. It has to be a period and region appropriate alphabet, basically.
Yeah.
So I mean, modern interpretations on your own personal tattoos. That is your personal choice, and we can't really judge. Carved into weapons and stuff on your reenactment kit. Your reenactment kit's meant to be educational, so make sure it's the right stuff, basically. Dan Davidson, I think to finish before we wrap things up. There we go. We got to finish on a bit of salt.
Definitely.
What's the best woofer moment you've seen, or what's your worst personal woofer moment? So, like we kind of touched a little bit on it last time about what people do with regards to their kit, as long as they're not doing it as an educational thing, as long as they're not trying to tell people it's right and it's the historical way, that's kind of their business. But what you just mentioned, that big show, there was a whole living history, and that Duck of Death helmet was on display. But there was an interview with one of their members last year where they went on about how they found their heathen faith through reenactment, which in of itself, not a problem. If that's that you got to that place through reenactment, good for you. But presenting, there was a lot of cringeworthy stuff in that, and it didn't. The problem,
shrine, man.
It was presenting a very skewed view of both heathenism, paganism, and Viking Age reenactors. Because when he's going on about, I do this because, I'm into Vikings, and this is what my ancestors would have done.
I wanted to be a warrior.
The bit about the ancestors, a lot of Vikings were Christian.
Especially considering the same guy has the Thor's hammer Daneaxe, which originally didn't exist in a period in which they were pagan. The Daneaxe had a Christian cross in it.
Yeah.
Because they were all Christian at that point, or most of them were outwardly Christian.
There's a skull with a Icelandic stave on it, which at the point in time that stave was being used, it was used in reference to Christian values. So when it says it's a compass to guide you, it also references trust in Jesus, he'll send you on the right way. So there's a lack of education there, being presented as equating Vikings with modern heathenism, which the two are separate. They're not, and as you said, I've always wanted to be a warrior, but rather than join the military, I joined a combat-safe reenactment group where, that was it. It feels like you're fighting for your life. If
you want to fight for your life, join the army.
Yeah, if your reenactment group is making you feel like you're fighting for your life in their training sessions, join a different group because they're probably not fighting safe.
Yeah.
Safe anyways.
So that it was
even Eastern shouldn't feel like you're fighting for your life.
I don't know about that. Sometimes you ain't seen some of those guys in bloody Russia.
No, but it shouldn't feel like that though.
It depends on what you want to do for it. So I know there's this common view from people that haven't done much Eastern where it looks incredibly aggressive, and I know there's a view from Eastern where people haven't done Western to say Western is tippy tappy. I've done both. I have personally never had a more intense fight than Corv Castle 2018 or 2019, and that was Western only. Okay. Second to that is Volin. Volin was incredible because of the atmosphere, and I felt like I was back in it. But when I got hit, I never got hit any harder than Western. I've never felt like, oh my god, I'm gonna die. This guy you're on about, I think I know who it is. I don't think I've seen that post, or I can't remember it anyway. But you've already hit the nail on the subject. Like as an ex-military lad from military school, not the army, unfortunately. If he wanted to go fight for his life and he wanted to feel like a warrior, go and enroll in the army, mate. not join a LARP society like Woofer.
Yeah, I mean that's it.
The whole finding your paganism and stuff as well. Again, you hit the nail on the head. Perfect, nice, really cool that he's done that. But why did you? What if it meant so much to you? Why did you need to join that to do it? It's not like it doesn't exist outside of it.
His shrine, right? His shrine is. I think you said someone else in your group had the same like. Was it clay boat?
Yeah.
And he had like laser cut wooden runes. It's just and some candles. It's really
it's just a case of I want to live, the honor the ancestors, but I'm doing it in a completely modern, sort of way. So yeah, it was just a lot of secondhand embarrassment that the level of kind of pop culture imagery that was being presented as historical fact, because that's not how the ancestors lived. And if that's your way of, celebrating in the modern sense, absolutely fine. Yeah. But when you tell a broadcasting network and, give them the story that, yep, this is historically how it was done. And this is representative of reenactors.
Very strange is that we actually talked about this at the end of the last episode. The same thing about the accuracy of what they think heathen beliefs are. Or rather of Norse heathen beliefs.
Yeah.
And I think there was one point I forgot to say last episode, which was that I was speaking to one of my friends about this, and he pointed out something really interesting, is that, like, for example, he's a Christian, and he's as interested in the heathen beliefs of the time as anyone else. And he pointed out that to see a really good impression of heathen religion in period would just be awesome. To see it properly done, and to see it done with respect. And I think there's also that period of time where you start to see Christianity and heathen religions getting on and merging because they've got better things to be doing than killing each other over religion.
Yeah.
That properly shown would be awesome.
No, totally agree. So we'll kind of wrap it up there. Hopefully that was a suitably salty end to today's very sodium high content. So we'll do a couple of shout outs. Like we said earlier, we mentioned a few of us are starring in and a couple of us are working on an authentic styled Viking Age game called, what's it called?
Hammerheart.
Hammerheart. So check that out on Facebook. Hammerheart, really good project. It's really promising. And you may see some recognizable characters appearing in it.
Yes.
We had quite a lot of questions that we weren't able to do this time. So we're going to do them next time. Please
we'll give priority to those ones first next time.
Absolutely. Check out all our respective pages. Just Eastern Things, Guthrum of Norvik, Anglo-Saxon Posting, and of course Goatworn Armband. Remember, you can support through the Patreon. I've recently added another tier, which is simply toss some salt to your Ulfric. I know some people can afford, £5, £10 a month. It's just a £1 chuck in, puts towards a cup of tea and a pint, every now and again, if you want to support the page. Like, share, and subscribe, and all that good stuff. And you can also access this podcast on, was it Podcast Addict?
Well, we're still having issues getting it up on there, but yeah, hopefully, if all goes well, it will be on Podcast Addict.
Okay, so plan to have it on Podcast Addict. Hopefully, by the time this goes out, those technical issues will be resolved.
Well, there is also a way to subscribe to it, which we can do without having it on the main Podcast Addict servers. So we can put a link out for that as well.
Fantastic. Well, hopefully you guys enjoyed our take while it was still warm on the old Assassin's Creed trailer, Warfare Simulator 2020. And we'll see you next time.
Cheerio.
See you
later.